Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Reviewing Comics with me, your host, Alexander Turbin. This week I'm going to be going over Paul the Samurai from NEC Comics, and it's a 1992 comic from the Tick spinoff. But before we get into that, I'd like to show you some of my own stuff. This is Random Access. It's a full-size, full-color comic that I produce for my patrons. You can check these out at patreon.com/Alexander Turbin. This is actually the second issue of the first volume, and that's not in color. This is black and white, and it has some Mutandis and stuff. This is the older one. This is a 1992 version. You can also check out my comics on alexanderturbin.com, and that has all my Mutandis, Random Access, all kinds of stuff like that. Or you can just get in touch with me at alexturbin04401 at instagram.com, and hopefully you guys check some of my books out, and hopefully you enjoy them. So like I said, this week, Paul the Samurai, he's an offshoot of the Tick, and so I originally really loved the Tick. It's from NEC, which is New England Comics, and it's a comic chain in the New England area, and I used to get comics from them every once in a while, and I was on their mailing list, and I would get their catalogs every once in a while, which is where the Tick actually started. He had a little cartoon segment, comic segment in there, and it just blossomed into a full size regular Tick comic book, and the rest is pretty much history because it went on to become something pretty famous. I stopped reading the Tick after issue maybe 3 or 4, something like that. It was just too difficult to get, even though it was a homegrown kind of project from Boston. I think it was actually from Boston or Worcester, something like that. Anyway, it was pretty close to me relatively, but still, my comic store, it would either sell out or they didn't get enough copies, or comics during the 90s were pretty random as to what comic shops would get them and how long they would last and all that stuff. So a lot of this 90s stuff I wasn't able to get, or I just would jump on in the beginning if I could, and then it just kind of fizzled out just because I didn't have access to that kind of stuff. But before I get into the writing and the art, let's just jump into the story. All of these NEC Comics Tick tie-ins are spoofs, parodies, and just humorous stuff. So you're not going to get anything too serious, which is pretty cool. This is my kind of humor. I didn't really laugh out loud on any of these, but it's just it's definitely quirky and definitely humorous in a way. It certainly makes you smile, even if you don't bust a gut laughing, which I did not at any of these pages. So the beginning of the story is a supervillain called Papercut, and he's off to mug these two rich, highfalutin people, like they were back in the day, coming out of their where they live, and he can apparently throw paper really fast and really hard and cut people, as his namesake says. Is he a parody of Bullseye? Most probably. And anyway, so he gets to talking about all of the rich kind of taking over and stuff, and he wants his revenge or something, like some kind of diatribe about that kind of thing. But Paul the Samurai, who is from the Tick, shows up, and he just kind of goes at it with Papercut, and they have a nice little fight, and they have a lot of word verbiage and talking about cultural differences and stuff like that. That's one of the things in this book is even though it's not lowbrow humor, it's pretty highbrow humor, because it goes into the relationship that Japan had with the United States and the American auto workers and all that kind of thing. So it's really highbrow stuff, and it's really a thinking person's humor, I think, instead of gutter humor or anything like that. It is a lot of slapstick, but it's pretty cool, even though I didn't laugh at all. So Paper Cut makes a mistake, something about the matches, and Paul kicks him and he runs away, pretty much. But before he goes, he flips a piece of paper at Paul and it gets him in the leg, and it hurts him. So he's out of commission. But then he takes off, Paper Cut runs away, and Paul pulls off this piece of paper that was he stabbed in the air or something like that. I'm not entirely sure. And then it goes into a flashback, which is pretty interesting that it doesn't say anywhere that it's a flash. I'm sorry. Yeah. No, it doesn't say anywhere that it's a flashback. You just kind of know. And which is, it's very skillfully done to be able to do that. To not have to explain to the reader what's going on, and yet they automatically know. Unfortunately, you think that this is a flashback to Paper Cut, and it really isn't. It's a, and it actually isn't a flashback, I guess. It's a, at the same time thing, because there's this character and he goes into a board meeting, and this is where the Japanese and American conflicts kind of come through, because this American automaker is they're firing one of their executives, and the executive and the other CEOs kind of go back and forth as to why the American auto industry is going down the tubes, and he blames the Japanese, and he's like, why don't you just shut another plant? And they kind of just go through this back and forth, and it's very maudlin, and it's very it's kind of sad, because the CEOs are like, let's give ourselves a raise because we did this, and it's really kind of sad. And it's also looking into the American auto worker, auto plant, and then, you know, years later you would have the bailout of the auto industry by the government, which was a big you know, very complex and convoluted thing. They kind of had to do it, or the U.S. economy would have been destroyed. But there's a lot of people that think they shouldn't have done that. So then it goes back to Paul, the samurai, and he is super steeped into the samurai world, which is always awesome. And it's he's just going on about his honor and all this stuff. And he a food delivery guy shows up, and it's sushi, and they just have this kind of interaction. A lot of this book is characters interacting, so the story is really kind of superfluous and not really not needed, but it's just kind of a straightforward story, but a lot of characterization and a lot of dialogue and stuff like that. So that's kind of cool. This whole page is a flashback to when he met the Tick, and all of their adventures and stuff like that. It's very tongue in cheek, and like the Tick even is in it and says interesting flashback crossover. So that's pretty cool. And then you don't flash back, but you flash to another part of the story. And this is the guy, the CEO, that was canned by the automotive industry or whatever. He goes home, and his wife he traps himself in his garage. The wife is worried about him, but he kind of goes nuts and slams the door and says, "Get out of my face, I'm doing something." So then a few days later, or the next day, so this is the one time that actually does say when it is, which, you know, maybe in retrospect it would have been better previously to put a couple of those in, just to keep things streamlined, and so you don't have to wonder even a little bit, because I certainly did have to go back and look and see what was going on. But it's at an auto dealership, and the auto dealer is trying to sell a car to a couple of people, and he's being very sneaky, and that's certainly part of the whole shtick of this thing is the automotive industry, and they have a lot of puns and quips about the industry, and everything going on at the time in 1992. Things weren't going so great for the automotive industry. So it's a giant mech that looks like a old cars, which is really very cool. He throws the other cars out windows, so you really kind of know that it's the fired CEO that went into his garage and created this mobile, monster mobile robot thing, which is really very cool looking. And so he's trashing the automotive place, and it kind of just stops, and he has to go back and get some gas, which is a little pun, like this giant mech is powered by gasoline, so that's kind of funny. Then you flash sideways to Paul the Samurai, and he has to hide his samurai sword in a giant piece of bread, and which is pretty cool. Excuse me. And he's gonna go to fight some crime or whatever. Excuse me again. But so he goes to get some sushi, and the guy gives him a hard time about the bread, and it's just kind of he's trying to fit into this neo a modern Japanese sushi bar, and like he hates the ninjas, and the ninjas work at the sushi bar, so that's kind of funny. And he's having sushi, and all the kids are going crazy, and apparently the kids are beating up the ninjas, and they put in a swastika guy on a skinhead, which is kind of unusual, but I suppose there it is. So all this carousing is going on in the sushi bar, and he's just kind of ignoring everything because he's got the zen of the samurai going on. And like I said, I guess the kids are being the ninjas are beaten up by the kids. I'm not sure. But then Paul finds out across the street, or maybe something, the giant mech car is going to trash the sushi bar. I'm not sure if the car is the one that's trashing the ninjas or not. But anyway, Paul starts fighting the mech, and they go into this whole fight scene. And next door is a SWAT team, I guess, of paranormal SWAT team. I don't know if this is in the Tick regularly, but they do kind of a slapstick thing where he always falls off the roof. Maybe that, like I said, maybe that's a Tick thing. So Paul and the mech just keep fighting and going on and on about Japanese versus American. There's a ton of puns, and they're humorous. They're humorous. Like I said, I didn't really bust a gut laughing, but I certainly enjoyed reading it. It made me smile, or made me think happy thoughts while I'm reading it, and so that's always a good thing. So it's Paul, and he's fighting the mech, and they just keep fighting, and eventually this other group of Japanese superheroes come along, and they want to defeat the giant mech, and they want Paul to help if he wants to, but Paul isn't into it. He's an American Japanese, so he doesn't want to help these real Japanese characters, these anime manga looking guys. Even though he says he feels drawn to them, he still doesn't want anything to do with it. So he's gonna fight the Japanese superheroes. I guess he had already defeated the car mech, which is pretty cool. And so he's gonna go on and fight the Japanese superheroes. And then it goes on to the next issue, or it has a sneak peek at the next issue, and they're all fighting. And then there's some talking about who Paul is and who the writers are, and all that stuff. And I actually forgot to say who was written by and drawn by. I'll go back to that. So, and then they have advertisements for more Tick stuff and more NEC comics and stuff. I don't know if NEC is still producing comic books. That would be cool if they still were. So anyway, It's written by, doesn't say, it says right here, the creator's Ben Udlin concept. So he's the one that created Paul the Samurai, and he created the Tick and that whole universe. And then he handed the idea off to Clay Griffith, the writer, and Dave Garcia, the penciler, and Jeff Whiting, the inker, and Bob Polio, yep, the letter. So as for the writing is very interesting, and it's a humorous thing. It's very slapstick. So everything kind of just happens. There's not a lot of setup. There's not a lot of characterization. Things just kind of happen, and then you go from event to event. There is a lot of, like I said, quips and little things like that about the Japanese and about America and stuff like that. So the writing is very enjoyable. I really did enjoy it. You're not looking for anything too deep when you get one of these comics, but it does have a subtext of some depth. It's interesting that you don't hear about the Japanese being taking over the auto industry or any kind of industry anymore. Now it's the Chinese, and after the Chinese, it'll be some other third world country where the big corporations can kind of take advantage of the low wages and stuff. So it does go into the characters. The characters do have some depth, even though it's slapstick and kind of in your face as to what's going on. And it's still enjoyable. I knew who the CEO character was as soon as he started talking. I know who Paul is. His samurai, honor bound, everything, and I know who that character is. So all of the characters, I'm not going to say they're one dimensional, but they're tropes. But that's perfectly okay, because that sets you into a reality where you can kind of know what's going on without really having any kind of backstory, without delving too many pages into an origin or anything like that. My one real complaint is these guys, the sharpshooters or snipers or whatever. There's a page and a half of that, and I don't really know where they were going with that, and I didn't really enjoy it that much. But I like the action, I like the quips, I like the storyline. So it was really nicely written and nicely drawn. I'm really impressed by the art. It's really flowing, and it's cartoonish without being overly cartoonish. So it really works well. There's backgrounds when there should be background, and there aren't. There's some open space, but it's not dead space. There's never dead space, and there's a lot of motion going on, which is really one of the highlights of the comic, is how much motion and emotion. Everybody has lots of different emotions. There's texture when there should be texture, but they don't overdo it. So there's a lot going on with this art. It almost looks like a 40s 50s kind of comic with that kind of a style, where it's just kind of raw, but the panels are bigger, so you can actually get a lot of the different artwork going on, and there's a nice variety of panels, which I really truly love. This is a very professionally looking comic book, and I truly appreciate that. It was really nice to read this, and the art is probably my favorite part of this whole thing. So yeah, it's got a lot going for it. So what would I give this a grade? I really enjoyed it. I would pick up another one, so that bumps it up automatically. The writing is pretty good. The art is really, really nice. I like this cover. I really like this cover. They could have gone over the top with the cover and really used these bright colors and stuff, but it's really kind of, it's not monotone, but it's very passive in what it is. And it's really a nice comic. It's really nice cover. So I'm going to give this an 8. Yeah, I'm really kind of surprised about how much I enjoyed it, and especially the art. Um, but I really did. So I'm going to give this a solid 8. So if you guys like this kind of content and you haven't seen one of my videos before, there's lots of other reviews. And I'd appreciate if you subscribed and hit the notification bell, and also maybe a thumbs up. I would really appreciate a thumbs up. I'm not entirely sure the whole algorithm of YouTube, but all of those things help, and it just makes me want to make more content, which I think a lot of people are enjoying the content because a lot of people love these comics, and they kind of like going back to maybe when they first got it, and thinking about when they first got it and the Tick and all of this other stuff. So Paul the Samurai from NEC Comics 1992, I give it an 8. Thanks you guys for watching, and have a great week. I'll talk to you later.